137. Let's get to Scream 4. This one came out in 2011, a while after Scream 3. It's once again directed by Wes Craven. Stars mostly the same cast, but also Emma Roberts, Kristen Bell, Hayden Panettiere, Marla Shelton, and Alison Brie. And the synopsis is 10 years have passed, and Sidney Prescott, who has put herself back together thanks in part to her writing, is visited by the ghost-faced killer. So I don't even remember this one coming out. I think I was so out of the horror movie world that I just was not even paying attention. I didn't care about Scream at the time, so I was like, I didn't even remember this being in theaters. And like basically all the sequels, I didn't know what to expect going in. But I was happy that Wes Craven came back once again, and this was his last movie before he passed. And this was also the very last one that I saw of the six. I had started with 5 and 6 and then went 1 through 4. So this was the last one that I had not seen up until that point. And like I teased with part 3, this one is very solid. It would still be middle of the pack. It's a good, not really reboot, but a good step forward in terms of getting the direction, the story, the characters on a very strong sense of footing. And also one thing that I know I've talked about with some of the other reviews, and I'll talk about it with 5 and 6 too, but I like how Wes Craven is able to tackle trauma in horror films. Like he's able to take a very generic, seemingly generic slasher story and incorporate things about past trauma, current trauma, and then even really update it for the time that it's out. Like, for example, this came out in 2011. There's more of the media, the internet, online, almost even like a cancel culture sort of thing in this movie. And I really do appreciate that in all of these films. And following Neve Campbell through all this, I think she's someone who, like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, honestly, I think she's more interesting than Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. I think there's more going on there underneath. But before we get into all that, talking about the opening of the movie, I love the opening for this movie. Some people might find it to be eye-rolling or whatever. I think it is so well done where, spoilers here, there's the meta twist where you're watching a Scream movie and then the characters are watching a movie that's stab, and then there's another stab sequence within that movie or that trailer. Like it's all very well done in how they think, all right, we're watching real people, and then they get stabbed. Oh wait, no, we're not actually watching them. And then there's the twist and all that. I think all that is awesome with Kristen Bell and Anna Paquin. I think that is a perfect opening, one of the best openings in a slasher movie maybe ever. I love that. The Alison Brie relationship with Neve Campbell, of her being this publicist, I really enjoy that, where the publicist is really trying to take advantage in some ways of Neve Campbell's situation and just for her own well-being. But then that character really gets their due justice, where there's that great sequence in the car garage, and then she's thrown off the roof onto the truck where they're having the press conference, where like, oh, everything's fine, and then wham, she lands on the van right behind them. So that's really, really well done, and that shows you the humor that Wes Craven always incorporates into his horror. And jumping quickly to the end, everything with Emma Roberts is awesome. I know some people say she's the best Ghostface of the series. I mean, she's definitely up there. I don't know if she'd be my top favorite, but she's very good in general, and she's very well known at this point for her work in horror, like American Horror Story, for example. But she's great in this, and everything with the third act, very classic Scream, where there's multiple killers, then she kills the other one, and then she tries to make it seem like she's a victim. And so there's that whole ridiculous sequence where she's stabbing herself, running into a wall, pulling out her hair. Like, all that stuff is awesome. And really, I mean, you can see that being believable to a certain extent in terms of someone trying to cover their tracks and doing sleight of hand misdirection. I think that's very clever and very good writing, very good direction. And then, as with all the movies, there's the sort of main climax where she's doing all that, and then there's the hospital sequence where she realizes that Neve Campbell is still alive and she has to try and go after her, and there's the whole fight in the hospital room. That's great. So this movie really, really ends on a great note and is definitely one of the best third acts of the whole franchise. And also, in terms of updating the story, I like everything with the film club bloggers, like video bloggers. I think that's very clever and funny, and them really indulging too much in the Stab fandom and trying to get Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox's characters to show up there. The twist or misdirection sequence with Hayden Panettiere, sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sure I am, and her crush, her boy crush, who it turns out to be the killer, where he's outside and she's refusing to let him in, but then turns out he is the killer. Oh, and I almost forgot. Probably the most gory sequence in the entire franchise to date is the sequence with the girl in her bedroom where she's basically gutted. Like, her guts are out on the bed. The walls and ceilings are covered in blood. Like, it's a pretty shocking sequence, but it's very, very effective. And I don't think they've topped that gore-wise, even in 5 and 6. So that's a very pretty disturbing part of the movie. And then the death of the 2 cops, especially the one who gets knifed right through his forehead. Like, it's just Wes Craven's ability to create these weird, shocking moments of horror and create really memorable moments seemingly out of very fairly mundane sort of horror deaths and slasher deaths. He's able to make it either ridiculous, funny, scary, visually memorable, whatever it might be. He just has that skill, and I will really miss getting more films from him because he is really one of a kind, and there's not many like him out there. The sequence with Nev Campbell on the roof and Ghostface chasing her, I like that. The sequence with the Stab screening, I think all that's very well shot, well directed, and really on that point, I don't have many criticisms for the movie. It's not a masterpiece. It's not the best of the franchise. You know, it's not reinventing things, but for the 4th film in a slasher franchise, pretty darn solid. Not many other ones like this have that quality at that point in time. And even just, it goes with having Wes Craven direct, you know, like the whole franchise almost, but having that consistency of vision, because oftentimes it's a different director every single time. If you look at Halloween or Texas Chainsaw, it's almost always a different person every single time. So this is one of the only ones that has that consistency, at least through the first 4. So that I really appreciate, and that really elevates it much higher than a lot of others like it. And or even something like Nightmare on Elm Street, which Wes Craven was involved in as well. So I think it's very entertaining, got some good scares, got some good humor, got good callbacks to the original, but not so much in a really pandery way. It just feels fresh and like, all right, here's stuff that people love, but we're still making our own original quote-unquote movie, and I would highly recommend it. So that one is a heavy 4 out of 5.